Their 4-game win streak is history. Speaking of BYU basketball, as they lose to the Arizona Wildcats, but there is plenty for BYU to pick up and take away from this game as they move forward in Big 12 play.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day, and more importantly, thank you to all of you we like to call our everydayers right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. The special edition postcast as BYU and Arizona have just gone final. The 20th ranked Arizona Wildcats beating BYU 85-74 inside the Marriott Center. Second Big 12 home loss of the season for the BYU basketball program, and it snaps a 4-game win streak for Kevin Young's squad. Now, tough loss, no doubt about it. You never want to see your squad lose on their home turf, but also highlights how difficult this Big 12 conference is top to bottom. That Arizona team is really, really good. They're now 10-1 in conference, and they look like a team that could make a deep run come March, speaking of the NCAA tournament. BYU battled in this game, and I look at it, the first half was as good at college basketball as I have seen in quite some time. When you've got two high-level teams who are trading baskets tit for tat, officials are kind of staying out of the way, teams are playing their system, and they're just playing high-level hoops. That's as entertaining a half of basketball as I have seen in quite some time. And BYU's played some pretty entertaining halves of basketball recently, but speaking just of the caliber of opponent, BYU went toe-to-toe with a really, really good Arizona team in that first half. Second half started okay, but the final 8 minutes for BYU, that's when it's, quote, winning time. We have heard that phrase a lot from Michael Jordan on down. The greats will tell you the final stanza of the game is what separates the proverbial men from the boys. And BYU shied away and just was unable to hit big shots when they needed to in the final stanza of this game. The other concern I have in the second half of this game is what happened to BYU's defense. My concern is BYU has spent all season long trying to implement Will Voigt's patented peel and switch defense, and they've used other iterations of defenses. We've seen zone, we've seen straight up man, we've seen some matchup type zone stuff to counter different things from different teams. But too often it feels like, and in this game in particular, it felt like BYU, once Arizona figured out what BYU is doing defensively, the Cougars didn't have the counter to be able to slow down Arizona. Now, part of that is philosophy, part of that is scheme. There's also part of it that requires you to put some effort out there. And it felt like the defensive effort waned a bit in this game. Was it due to the high level of the just nature of this game, the energy expended earlier on caused BYU to falter down the stretch? Maybe so. But when you can't make shots, at one point, I think it was 6 or 7, I was at least 5 possessions straight that BYU didn't score. I think it was more than 6 minutes that they didn't score a bucket. They obviously got some free throws in that span, but no made field goals from the field. You do that in the final stanza of literally any game, speaking of Big 12 play, and you're going to be hard-pressed to win that basketball game. There were chances for BYU in this game to seize control of it. The crowd so badly wanted BYU to seize control. There's actually a pretty sizable Arizona contingent that was on hand as well. And it was a really, really entertaining basketball game. And it's one of those games that you look at and say, okay, BYU will be better for having played this game as they go forward here in Big 12 play. I've talked about it ad nauseum recently on the podcast. This final 10-game stretch for BYU, the Arizona game kicked it off. There were 7 quad 1 games. Now, that was the outset of this 10-game stretch. 2 quad 2 games and just 1 quad 3 game, and that happened to be the regular season finale against the University of Utah in the rivalry game. There are major opportunities. We also conversely can look at them as landmines for BYU in this back half of the Big 12 schedule. But what happened against Arizona will be something that this BYU team will learn from. They will understand that if you want to be the best, you got to be able to go toe-to-toe with the best and match them bucket for bucket. You can't wither on the vine late in a game like that and hope to stay in touching distance. Arizona pressed BYU. They were able to make the big plays down the stretch, and they were the victors, and they deserved to take that W home with them to Tucson. The other thing I look at in this game is that BYU needs more guys to step up in big circumstances. You look at the box score for BYU, and it's decent. Like Toby Awaka from Arizona had 14 points and 9 rebounds. You kept one of the best rebounders under 10 rebounds. That's a credit to BYU. You also have Caleb Love with 18 points. Jaden Bradley had 17, and then Henry Visar or whatever, they had 17 as well. So big guys showed up in big circumstances for Arizona. Conversely, where are the big performances for BYU? Jaeger Demon shot 20 times in this game, led BYU with 16 points. He showed that once again, Jaeger is figuring things out on the fly here, and he's getting better and better as the Big 12 season progresses. But who went with him in this game? Nobody really. I pumped up Richie Saunders earlier this week on the podcast, talking about how he had been, in my mind, an all Big 12 first-team honoree. Just 11 points on 3 of 8 shooting. Why is Richie not getting more shots manufactured or looking for more shots in BYU's offense? Jaeger shooting 20 times is a bit of a concern because that's a lot of shots. 2 of 9 from 3, not ideal. BYU's a team, 10 of 34 from 3. It's not ideal at all. Dallin Hall, also 11 points. Just 3 Cougars in double figure scoring. That's not going to cut it for BYU. I know you got solid outputs from different players as well, but you've got to have stars, and the guys that you want to be stars. I look at a lot of BYU fans want so badly for Trevin Nell to be this bucket getter and this big shot maker. 1 of 3 from the field, 0 of 2 from 3. That's not going to cut it for the guy they called a shot doctor. Why does he only have 3 shots in this game? Mawit Mag, who's been very, very solid for BYU, 3 of 9 from the field, regressed to the mean a little bit as relative to his historical averages as a first-year player. He had moments in this game where he was absolutely brilliant, but in the end, not enough. That's the concern I have for this BYU squad is who are the dogs, the guys who have that heart in them, that when the going gets tough, they're going to say, Coach, give me the ball, get out of my way. I'm going to go get us a bucket. I know Kevin Young has talked about guys like Dawson Baker waking up thinking they can't be stopped. And Dawson had a solid game in himself, like I said, 8 points, 3 of 5 from the field off the bench. But you got to have a guy, in this circumstance, guys who can step forward and be the you-know-whats out there on the court and say, this is our game. We're season control. Remember that big shot from Cannon Catchings that gave BYU that brief lead? That felt like a moment BYU had to be able to get a couple of stops, get a couple more buckets. They may have turned the tide of this game. Unfortunately, Arizona, the veteran unit that they are, and the Big 12 title hunt favorite, whatever you want to term them, they showed their gumption and said, no. Let's reel them back in. They ain't getting away with this. So there are a lot of lessons for BYU to take away from this game. Number one, you learned what it is to go up against the best of the best in the conference. Earlier this season, BYU played the other co-favorite right now in the Big 12 in Houston and got absolutely demolished by the Cougars. They learned from that game. They competed more favorably in this game against Arizona. I think it's because of what they've learned along the way. But this also will be another stepping stone, another learning opportunity for BYU to build from. They've got to find guys or have guys step up. That's the other thing I want to take away from this game and pass along is that you need to have multiple guys say in tough moments, give me the ball, manufacture a shot, and knock it down. That's the other thing is you can't say that BYU didn't have looks in this game. They had looks. They generated, I thought, very, very good looks. Buckets didn't go down. This is a young team still relative to eligibility, but we're getting into the time of the season where you've got to separate yourself. I'll also add the bracketology from Joe Lunardi. He said earlier today that BYU, even with the loss that he was anticipating, was still in the NCAA tournament field, his projected NCAA tournament field. So this is not a dagger through the heart of BYU's tournament chances. It's a quality loss. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, and it absolutely is. But BYU will be better for this. And now they have to go to Cincinnati and bounce back. Cincinnati's a team that's struggling. They've lost 6 straight, if I recall correctly. I remember, I didn't see what the results were of Cincinnati's game in the early part of this week, but they have got a big opportunity as they head to Cincinnati, and that's a game you got to have. You got to win that game. You can't let this carry over into that one, and we'll have more for you guys as the week progresses, getting ready for that Cincinnati game, and it should be a fun one. Big opportunity once again for the Cougars. Another quality opponent on the road, but it's got to be a win. You've got to go 1-1 this week after you lose this game to Arizona. So more on this coming up on future editions of the podcast. But once again, tough loss for BYU, but all hope is not lost, Cougar fans. So I think it'll be a learning lesson once again for BYU as they move forward here in Big 12 play. So that's going to do it for this special edition postcast of Locked On Cougars. Coming up on our full edition tomorrow, all about BYU football schedule. What did the Big 12 do moving the Holy War to mid-October? We'll also talk about the overall outlook of BYU season, some superlatives, best road trip, maybe what I consider to be the best game on the docket on paper right now, and even my early prediction for BYU in 2025 in football. We'll have all that for you guys early tomorrow morning because it's a late night as we break this down. But once again, as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen today. And once again, thank you for being everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.